see you. Hi, I'm just going to wait a moment or two longer to make sure that everybody who wants to be here at the start has managed to make it, and then we will begin. Hi, so we are going to talk today, or I am going to talk with you today, because it's very much a conversation between the two of us. I'm going to talk with you today about how to heal from fear. How to heal from fear. What a huge subject that feels to be for so many of us, because so many of us feel absolutely paralysed by fear and terrorised by fear. And that is entirely understandable. Fear is one of the most powerful feelings and sensations and experiences that we can have. So is it not absolutely natural that it would be something that we would want to heal from? And I think often when we talk about healing from something, I'm moving you again, but I will be back. There we go. Often when we talk about healing from something, we imagine that what we mean by that is that we want to get rid of it. We want the feeling to stop. We don't want any more of that. We don't want any more fear. We don't want any more of those sensations in our body. We want it to stop. This will stop in a minute. We are nearly there. Okay, done. Done. We want fear to stop. And so many people who come to see me or message me or write to me ask me how you make fear stop. How do you get rid of these feelings in your body and what fear does to your head? And while I understand that entirely, because of how powerful and frightening they can feel, what we're going to talk about today is the purpose of fear. We're going to talk about the purpose of fear, why we have it, and how we engage with fear in an entirely different way, so that we don't actually have to fear it. We can embrace it and we can use it. So I guess that may sound a bit of a strange way to reframe fear, but it isn't really, because it means that we can live alongside fear and side by side with fear without having to dread it. And in fact, we can see that it is one of our greatest allies and friends. And I'm going to talk about fear from the human perspective in terms of neuroscience and what happens in the body. And then I'm going to talk about fear from the spiritual perspective in terms of what it's telling us about what's happening to us spiritually. So both of those things we're going to look at today. And I'm going to talk about that briefly, and then I'm really going to open it up to you, because it's a bit pointless our getting together if all I do is talk at you. So I'm going to say a few bits that I feel are helpful and are important about those two aspects, the human aspect and the spiritual aspect. And then I'm going to invite questions from you, and we'll have a bit more of a conversation. So how does that sound? Give me a thumbs up if that's the kind of thing that you feel is going to be useful to you. Brilliant. Thank you. Great. So let's do the human perspective first, because that's actually the bit that bothers most of us the most. So let's talk about the human perspective and think about fear in that way. And from the human perspective, fear is information. Fear is information in the way that all sensations in the body, because that's what fear is, are all sensations in the body are signals that come from our inner being via our emotional GPS system. And our emotional GPS system expresses itself through sensations in the body. So we all know what fear feels like. It is the most appalling electric shock that goes through our body. And along with that electric shock that seems to paralyze us and grip us, we then get feelings of heat. We might feel our legs are about to give way. We get a cotton wool head. We can't think. Our hands start to sweat, and we feel like we can't breathe. And that's the sensation of fear. And actually, it's not fear that we really fear. It's the sensations of fear that we actually fear. And so we're going to talk about those first. So the sensations of fear, those feelings that I've just talked about, they are caused by stress hormones pumping through the body, telling us that we either need to flee or to fight. They are fight or flight in motion. And if you think about the necessity, the importance of that signal, then that immediately makes those sensations our ally and our friend, not our enemy. The only reason that we believe them to be our enemy is because we don't do the thing that they are inviting us to do. They are inviting us to run, to take a decision to run, or to take a decision to stay and fight. What do? We become paralyzed by the sensation. And so that paralysis convinces our body that this threat that we are facing is so much bigger than even our body and our brain thought, because we're unable to fight and we're unable to flee, and we are just gripped and paralyzed. And what's usually happened in that moment is that we have become caught in the sensations, and we're staring fixedly into a tunnel that is white terror. And what happens as we do that is two things, and they are the two things. Sorry, it makes me laugh when people call me grandma, but hi, hello. Got a lot of people saying hi grandma. That's fine. What happens when we stare into that tunnel is two things. We hold our breath, and then we start to breathe shallowly, because we're caught with a thought and we forget to breathe. And the second thing that we do is our muscle tension becomes really tight and gripped, because we can't think and we can't react. So two things: we gasp and then breathe shallowly, and our muscles go tense. And those two signals are the very signals in our body that tell our hormones to pump, tells the part of our brain that pumps those hormones, that gives the instruction to pump through our bloodstream. What's supposed to happen is that we take a quick gasp when we see the threat, and our muscles tense, and then we either run or we fight. As in, we start to breathe again, and our muscles loosen because we're running. We're not meant to stay in that state of, and it's that remaining in that state of, when we're caught by the fear thought, that gives us all the sensations that we most dread. So there are two things that we can do immediately to bring down those sensations. The first is breathe out. A promise you, the minute you start to breathe out, you will feel those sensations start to ease. And it's very simple. It's very simple. They start to ease because you've released your breath. You're no longer holding your breath. So you're no longer telling your brain that there's a threat or that there's danger. Because if you think, the first thing we do when a threat has passed is we go, oh, it's okay now. That out breath is read by the fear centre, the amygdala, down here, as it's over now. Stand down. Stand down. And so the first thing to do when you realise that all of those sensations are beginning to hit you is breathe out. Take control. Use the off switch. The off switch for all of those sensations is the out breath. And make it slower and more controlled. If you watch an athlete, watch an athlete getting ready for a race, you will see them doing two things: shaking the muscles out, exactly what we've just been talking about. They don't want tense muscles, they're getting ready to run. And the second thing is you'll see them going, they're doing exactly what we've just discussed. And they are gearing up to use the sensation of fear, which is exactly the same as excitement, no difference, except what we call it and how we see it, in a positive way. So let's just recap that bit. What gives us the sensations in our body that we call fear and that we dread so badly is that the minute we have a fear thought, we tense and we stop breathing, and then we stare into the tunnel, concentrating on that thought. Essentially, we become paralysed, and our amygdala, our fear centre, goes into overdrive because we're supposed to be able to fight or flee, and if we're paralysed, we're in big trouble. So more adrenaline, more cortisol, more heat, more heart pumping. Breathe out. Breathe out, slow it all down, and you will find that your ability to think comes back. It really is that simple. It's that simple because the amygdala, the fear centre, is simple. It's the reptilian part of the brain. It's the most primitive part of the brain. It doesn't understand what you try to tell it. It's no good trying to talk to the amygdala when you get frightened and say, this is silly, there's nothing to worry about, there's nothing to be frightened of, stop this now. The amygdala can't understand language. It's a dinosaur. You have to show it. And you show it that there is no danger by the out breath and by relaxing your muscles. And the more you do that, I absolutely promise you, I guarantee you, those sensations will start to calm down. People, when they start to try that, are really shocked at how simple that is. But it's simple because the amygdala is simple. The amygdala is a dinosaur part of the brain. It's the primitive brain, and it responds simply to sensation. And the only messages it gives are to switch on stress hormones or to switch them off. That's it. That's it. And it can react to an actual situation. So a car coming at you at 60 miles an hour. It can react to an actual real situation, but it can equally react to a remembered situation. So, I don't know, example would be, you've got to go to a job interview tomorrow and the last job interview you went to went really badly wrong. The very thought of tomorrow's interview triggers the memory of the last interview. You tense, you hold your breath. The amygdala reads danger. And it's reading danger from a memory, from a thought of the past. But to the amygdala, it's every bit as real as a car coming at you at 60 miles an hour. And your solution is the same. The minute you feel those sensations rise in your body, it's the out breath over and over again, slowing down more and more and more, and loosen your muscles, and give the signal that the amygdala needs that it's okay, which is, it's all right now. The minute you do that, you will feel an easing of the sensations in your body. And gradually, the more you do that, you will feel that your brain can think again. And the minute you get to that point, you go to this next step. So, what kicked off fight or flight? What happened? Are all the physical sensations. Now we get to how you solve the bit behind that. So if you think of fear as the signal that there is a threat, then it's what you do with the threat. Well, the most important thing that you don't do is you stay paralysed, because remember, when you're staring into that tunnel, you hold your breath, you tense your muscles, the amygdala reads danger, and it keeps pumping adrenaline and cortisol. And stress hormones make it impossible for you to think, because they're gearing you up to run or to fight. So use your breathing, loosen your muscles, get to the point where you can think, and then realise that fear is an invitation to do one of a few things, the most important of which is to take action. We're not meant to stay in fear, we're meant to realise that it is an invitation to do something. If we don't do something, then the threat remains, the amygdala keeps on reading danger, and we will keep having the sensations of fear. So what does do something mean? Well, it either means make a plan, so work out what it is you're frightened of and make a plan. We often think, there's nothing I can do about this. There's nothing I can do about this. Actually, that's just not true. There are always things that we can do. We might not immediately be able to think about them, but that's because we're stuck in a helpless, frightened place. But there is always something we can do. We can always give ourselves permission to do something. It might be to go outside and breathe in some fresh air. It might be to go and have a conversation with somebody. It might be to phone somebody and get information that we need. It might be to write an email. It might be to sit and plan our way out, the way we get away, the way we escape. It might be to decide that if we haven't heard from that person or that organisation by Tuesday, this is what we're going to do. We can decide even to not worry. We can say, I am going to take the decision that I'm not going to worry about this till Friday, when I know I will have some planning and thinking time. So I've put this on hold till Friday, and on Friday I will think about it. And on Friday I will make a plan of action. But we must always do something. A decision to not do something is a decision. And making a decision is doing something. the one thing we must not do is remain in that paralyzed state of staring into a tunnel of fear. The other thing that we need to remember about fear, which can help us, is that usually fear is fueled by our imagination. It's fueled by what we are imagining or anticipating is going to happen. Yes, somebody said then you start to take back your power. Absolutely you do, because that's what it's all about. We have felt powerless when we're gripped by the paralysis that comes from just staring into our fear. But the minute we start to say there are things I can do, there are decisions I can take, there are plans I can put together, even if I have to change my mind, even if I have to rethink them, that's fine, I just adjust. But I must do something, or I must plan to do something. But let's go back to that idea that fear is fueled by our imagination, the way we anticipate something is going to go. If you think about it, we're usually basing what we imagine is going to happen on the last time. We're usually looking at something from the past and we cut and paste it and we stick it on that future event, and we convince ourselves that that future event is going to go exactly the same way as that event in the past went. Well, firstly, nothing ever repeats that accurately, ever, except in a film. And two, when you get to that situation, you will not be the same person as the one who was thinking about that situation from where you sit right now. You will have slept, you will have been guided, you will have inspiration, you will have more at your fingertips, and you will have discovered more about your power, your resources, and your resilience by facing the fear than you think. When you get to that situation, you will not be the person you are now. We are always looking into the future from the perspective of the person who sits here. This person is this moment's person. This person has not thought the thoughts that this person will have in 5 minutes, in 2 hours, as a result of that conversation, as a result of reading that, as a result of having that dream, or as a result of just giving it a bit of space and thinking. The person who is going to face that situation is not you. That person is your future you, and the person you are now cannot begin to imagine what your future you will know, how your future you will feel. How can you possibly know that? It is pure imagination. So you take strength from that, and you take comfort and reassurance from that, and you pull your imagination right back in, and you say to yourself, I am trying to imagine that situation which my future self will know how to deal with, as if I'm my current self. I am the leading edge version of me now, but the version of me that will meet that situation will be the leading edge version of me then. Why am I worrying about that now? In this moment, nothing bad is happening. In this moment, all is well. In this moment, I am safe. in this moment, I am just sending my imagination out into the future, which I cannot know about, because I am not the self that I will be then. So fear is a signal that prompts us to take action. That action can be immediate, like I'm not sitting here in this, I'm going to go out in the garden, I'm going to do something else. This, I need to move, I need to breathe, I need to break this now. I'm in that tunnel, I need to break it. It might be immediate action. It might be, I don't know why I'm sitting here worrying about what happened between me and my friend a couple of days ago. Why am I not picking up the phone and talking to them? Action. Why am I sitting frightened about something that I can actually take a step towards fixing? So if there's a step you can take the step. If there isn't a step you can take, plan the next step. Plan when you're going to take a decision about the next step. What you must not do ever is believe the illusion that you are paralyzed. You are not paralyzed. You are just temporarily gripped by a thought, and you have temporarily stopped breathing, and you have temporarily tensed up, and because of that you've got all that going on in your body, and because of that you can't think. 2 stages. First, keep breathing out more and more slowly and in an increasingly controlled way till you feel those sensations beginning to come down, and as you do that, loosen up. And I promise, as you do that, you will hit the place where you realize that your mind is clearing. It's no longer full of cotton wool and fog. It's beginning to clear, and you can think again. And you go to stage 2. Stage 2 is, this is inviting you to take action. Think of all the different actions. There's never just one piece of action you can take. There are umpteen pieces of action. You might not like to think of some of them because you might not quite like the idea of doing some of them, but they're still options and they're still there. So often we say there's nothing I can do, when actually there is a lot we can do, we just don't want to do it. But that's a different thing. That's a different thing. And don't let your imagination trick you into believing that what it is presenting to you as a way that something is going to go, don't believe that it's true. It's like a dream. It's like a fairy story. You are imagining it all. And the most important thing to remember is the you that will meet that situation is not the you that you are now. The you that will meet that situation, firstly, has been through this fear. And out of this fear, you will have grown, you will have developed some options, some thoughts, you will have grown stronger and a bit wiser, and the possibilities will have loosened up a little. You won't be the same you. So don't imagine that situation from this you now. That's the first bit. The second bit is, what does fear mean from a spiritual perspective? What is fear from a spiritual perspective? And what I would offer as thoughts is, 1, fear means we've forgotten who we really are. Fear means that we are believing the illusion of our powerlessness, our separateness. We are believing that we are a helpless human being rather than a spiritual being having a human experience, but always plugged in to the field of energy which holds everything, and with which we are, if we will only listen, in contact the whole time. This field of energy, whatever you call it, conscious, intelligent, compassionate energy, this field of energy is forever talking to us, is forever dropping signs in our path, is forever throwing ideas and reminders, is forever nudging us. You just have to start to listen. I go through every day fairly frequently saying, oh, thank you. Yeah, I see why you told me that now. I see why I had that feeling now. I have to listen to this warning feeling because I know it's important. I don't know why I need to put extra water in the cart, but I do. I don't know why I need to take that pair of shoes with me, but I do, because if that idea's come into my head, well, it means something. So fear, from a spiritual perspective, means that we have disconnected. We've disconnected from all that information and guidance and intelligence that's there for us all the time, and we are believing the illusion of separateness and powerlessness. And we are believing the human perspective, and we have forgotten the spiritual perspective, i.e. that we are one, and we can never be alone, and we can never be separate, and we can never be without help or guidance. So that's the first thing that I think fear tells us from a spiritual perspective. And I think the second is that we are being invited to move out of our comfort zone. We are on the edge of something new. We are on the edge of meeting a new path, moving into our purpose, being grown, being stretched, expanding, being encouraged to go beyond. And the minute we accept that invitation, the fear goes. Because of course everything we really need is inside us all the time, because we're always plugged into the field. So everything we need is always inside us. And the minute we push through that fear and accept the growth that's, or the path that we are being invited to follow, that fear has done its job. It's alerted us that we are resisting moving forward, and the fear goes. I think the third thing is fear from a spiritual perspective tells us that there's stuff that's waiting to be healed. I think when we experience fear about situations, about people, or about our ability to cope with things, it means that there is stuff still waiting to be healed, and that we need to spend a bit of time working out what that is. So what memories are still live in us that we are reliving and acting out? What memories are alive in us? What has happened to us in our history that we are reliving and repeating again and again and again, and expecting the same thing from again and again and again? What's coming up to the surface to be healed? Because from a spiritual perspective, that is the message, that's part of the message offered to us by fear. This is waiting to be healed. Because the spiritual path is a path of healing. It's a path of there being a human setup with a history of events that sets us on the road to growing via healing from those events. And so the entire human journey is one of healing and of growth. So if we haven't done the work, we will continue to experience fear. We will experience fear because something is waiting to be healed. And I think the fourth and final thing that fear tells us from a spiritual perspective is that we have lost sight of our own, what I would call our soul signature. That is who we incarnated to be, the energy that we brought in to the world when we incarnated, I would call our soul signature. And if you watch a baby newly arrived in the world, then you see fearlessness, you see joy, you see a little being up for experiencing everything fully. They laugh with their whole body and they cry with their whole body, and they're not afraid to immerse themselves in this human journey, in this human experience. But when we grow afraid, we forget that that's who we really are. We forget that that's what we came to do. We start to close down and we grow armour and we start to suffocate and strangle our heart. And as we do that, we lose touch with our soul signature. If you asked a shaman how you get back to your soul signature, a shaman would say, they would reply to you and say, when did you last dance? When did you last sing? When did you last tell stories? When did you last go out in nature? Do the ordinary everyday things that restore you. The ordinary everyday things that restore you. Go back to simplicity and you will go through fear to the other side. So that's what I wanted to say to you today. That's it really, I think. I think I wanted to just offer those two different thoughts. The human perspective on fear and the spiritual perspective on fear. You'll maybe have questions that you would like to ask. And I'm watching, the reason you see me look up there is I've got a clock on my wall, and I'm aware that if I go over time, I will lose the video entirely. That happened before, because I've got an hour, it seems, on my bubble. So I just keep checking the time as we go forward. But for now, we've got maybe another 10 minutes or so. So if you do have questions that you would like to ask, either about the human perspective or the spiritual perspective, then I shall look at your questions coming up, and I will happily answer those. And I want to say also in the meantime that several people, quite a number of people have messaged me asking whether I offer longer sessions, and because a fair number of people have asked me that, I was also going to flag up with you, I would have to charge for a session because it would be a full afternoon or a full morning or even a day, around a particular subject and how to heal from whatever that subject was. And if you might be one of those people who would be interested in a small number, maybe 15 to 20 people, who could all see each other on a screen and be together with me for an afternoon or a morning or a full day, if you would direct message me, once I've got enough people who would be interested in doing that, I will go ahead and organise the first of those. So if you would like to spend some more direct time with me and have much more opportunity of an interchange, maybe some exercises, some discussions, a very different way of being together. If you would like to do that, then please do direct message me, and as soon as I know that we've got the numbers to do it, I will go ahead and do that. I'm just going to read this question. I'd like to know how to move forward on my spiritual perspective. I did let go of fear and things are starting to happen for me. Any advice would be appreciated. So, the spiritual perspective then is all about remembering who we really are. The spiritual perspective is that we realize that we are a spiritual being. We are an energetic being. We have emerged out on the leading edge of the energy that is everything. And I say that if you don't want to look at it from a spiritual perspective, look at it from a quantum physics perspective, and there is no question that that's what we are. We are energy vibrating, all connected. Everything is connected energy. And so the spiritual journey involves embracing that truth and allowing ourselves to remember, because before we incarnated we knew, just like we will know when we leave this body again who we are. Immediately we will know. It will be so familiar to us, just as it was in the first few weeks of life before we started to forget. So the spiritual journey involves letting go of the illusion of being human and embracing again the reality that we are spiritual beings and that we are energy. We are energy evolving, emerging, re-emerging, always, at all times, connected with each other, parts and aspects of each other, and always moving within the field of energy that is everything. And I agree, we can get so bogged down by fear and overwhelmed by life, and I would want to say the illusion that we see to be life, that it's easy to lose touch with our spiritual self. This life is the illusion. This life that we voluntarily incarnate into for the sheer adventure of the growth and the wisdom that we will gain from it is the illusion. It's the illusion because we forget how powerful we are. We forget how much we really know. We forget how much we come into this life having inside us. So the spiritual journey involves rediscovering and remembering that. And I've just had another comment here which says, my biggest fear is of becoming my true self. The moment I reach an enlightened place, I self-sabotage the experience so that I never move forward. I feel so trapped and helpless. Now, I wonder what you're afraid of. I wonder what you're afraid of, because you see, when you talk about becoming my true self, you always are. You're never not your true self. All that's happening is you're believing an illusion of something else. You never cease to be your true self. Your true self is your inner voice, and it's speaking to you all the time. You can never not be your true self, and you can never not be on your path. All you can do is forget. And when you forget, you feel fear. When you forget, you feel fear. When you remember, you feel calm. when you remember who you really are, when you remember all that you are, all that you are connected to, all that you belong to, then you feel calm, because you know there is nothing to fear. We only fear because we have forgotten for a while. And so I would ask the person who's just asked me that question about self-sabotaging, I wonder why you don't want to move into full alignment with who you really are. Are you afraid of how powerful that would make you? Are you afraid that you would be setting out on a journey that would invite you to change, to let go of some things? I would invite you to wonder what it is that you're frightened of, and to work with it, and listen to what your inner voice says, and listen to all the guidance that surrounds you. So we seem to have lost and then come back. I've clearly I seem to be back again. It wasn't an hour hasn't gone, so I'm really puzzled. Anyway, people are back, so hi. Yeah, we were just talking, I was just inviting questions about either the human perspective on fear or the spiritual perspective on fear. And I was also saying that if there are enough people who would like to come together with me in a small group, 15 to 20, for which I would have to ask you to pay a small amount for, because it would be a more significant amount of time. If you would like to direct message me, we can get together and talk about how we go forward with that. And I also have suggested that there might be times when people might like to actually come into the video and go split screen with me. I'm very happy to do that too, but I would want you to direct message me first so that I can check out with you that you're going to be okay with what we might talk about and how that might be. So please direct message me with either of those things, either going split screen with me or forming a group with me and having a half day or a full day where we explore things in far greater depth. I would really love to work with groups again. I worked with groups as a trainer for about 15 years ago, and being able to talk with you guys like this is sort of making me remember how much I love doing that. So get in touch with me, direct message me if you would like to do that. I'm watching the time, and I reckon we've got about 5 minutes left. So I'm going to ask you whether there are any final questions. And if not, then I will just tell you that this video, hopefully, will be available to watch again within the next 24 hours on my own site. And I will put up a message on my bubble letting you know how to find that site, where it is, and letting you know when the video is available. I think we're probably coming to the end now. I don't see any more questions coming up, so I'm going to say thank you for joining me today. It's been really lovely to talk to you. I hope what I've said has been useful. In the meantime, till we meet again and talk again, take care of yourself, stay safe, tea and cake, always tea and cake, and stay blessed. Bye for now.